But this woman is a woman clothed with the glorious light of the sun and standing on that object that reflects the light of the sun. But in this prophecy there is not only a woman, but a great red dragon. And this great red dragon with its tail gathers 1/3 of the stars of heaven. And because this woman is pregnant with a baby, this dragon is standing in front of her to devour the child as soon as it is born. Let's think about these three entities, these three symbols. We have the dragon, the woman, and the male child, because the baby is identified in verse 5 as a male child. What do they represent? The book of Revelation, of course, is a book of symbols. A book of 7 visions, but in those visions there are symbols that we must seek to interpret. And here there is no doubt about the identity of the dragon, is there? Verse 9 tells us very plainly that the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan. In those words, using the word serpent, it takes us back to the Garden of Eden, when this serpent spoke to Adam and Eve and brought sin into the world. So the dragon is very clearly identified as representing Satan. And you'll notice that it says there in that verse, Satan who deceives the whole world. That's an important point to remember about the identity of this serpent. Then there is the woman. And though we may not take time this morning to look at the text in Scripture, but the woman very clearly is identified as the church, God's people. In Old Testament times, God often likened or compared the people of God to a beautiful woman. But when God's people broke the relationship that they should have with Jesus, then Israel has played the harlot. Israel has become a prostitute, replacing its relationship with God with the affairs of the world and false gods and false teachings. And then there is the male child. Is there any doubt as to the identity of this male child? Very clearly, it says, she bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. A strange symbol, but taken from the Old Testament in the 2nd Psalm and verse 9, a psalm pointing to the work that Jesus would do, and that ultimately all the nations of the earth would be subject to his rule and to his authority. So the male child is Jesus, because it goes on to say, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne. There's only been one baby boy ever born into this world whose destiny ultimately is to rule all the nations, and who was caught up to God, and as the book of Hebrews tells us, is now seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. So here is this great cosmic conspiracy, this great controversy, this great battle between Christ and Satan. It is introduced to us in Revelation chapter 12. You notice that the woman, it says, when she bore this male child, standing in front of her was the dragon, to devour the child as soon as it was born. Was there any attempt to destroy Jesus as soon as he was born? You'll remember the book of Matthew particularly records the hatred against that baby boy when King Herod gave the command that all babies under the age of 2 should be killed. A terrible event. But the significance of this chapter is that it pulls aside the curtain on an apparently political event and reveals who is ultimately responsible for the decree to kill all the babies in Bethlehem. if you and I had lived in those days, and if there had been newspapers, we might have seen the headline, King Herod orders the death of all the babies in Bethlehem. But behind that apparently political event, we see Satan determined to destroy this baby boy.